Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip hip hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Genes.
Welcome to CutOff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA and elevates the voices of adoptees who are woefully misrepresented in the public narrative about adoption. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. I am a domestic infant adoptee, as well as an NPE and a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Renee Culvert, co-host / village idiot who has wormed her way back into the show.
Hardly. There was no worming to be had, or the worming came from me.
Yes.
Those of you who are newer to the podcast will probably not remember Renee, because Renee was my original co-host way back when I was an ingenue. I don't know, first 20 episodes, something like that.
Seems right. Yeah, I
know,
think that's
something
right.
like that. Now that I'm self-producing this podcast, I still need someone to bounce off of. And Renee was the first person that came to mind. Let me say, Renee will say yes to anything because she is that kind of person.
That's not true. She'll
Yes.
say no occasionally. I'll just never say no to you.
Oh.
I think that's where the demarcation happens. Is that, I mean,
Kudos.
use your power wisely, but
All right.
I'll never say
Okay.
no to you.
We did do an episode on the Patreon. So
Yes,
the
yeah.
Patreons, the patrons are familiar with you. But
friends.
why don't you share stuff about yourself with the people who you are new to?
Sure, I'd love nothing more. Now, I don't remember what we said on the Patreon, so there may not be much of a catch-up. It may
Yeah,
be
I
like
don't
2 years
remember what we
later.
did either.
She's still doing the same thing. Who knows? So Julie and I know each other as I am her biggest fan for good reason. We met doing a show called Sideshow, a musical, wherein you guys, you know Julie as this genius genealogist. I know her as the best musical theater performer I have ever seen. This woman
Okay.
has talent for days. So we met doing the show. Julie was a star. I was chorus. And followed her around like a puppy dog, insisted on friendship ever since. Have we been friends
22.
for 20 years?
22, my friend.
22 years.
Almost exactly 22 years.
Is that hurting both of our feelings? Are
Yes.
both of our feelings hurt there?
Yes.
Okay.
Both of
all
our
right.
feelings are hurt
Sure,
about
sure,
that
sure, sure.
because we are ancient. And I, by the way, am way older than Renee, so it hurts my feelings way more than yours.
Listen, time is hurting both of us, and
Yeah.
we know. But you look fantastic. Okay, so listen, you got it. We
We did this
the,
show together.
Trajection, I think, of most musical theater people is you get into podcasting eventually.
Way
so-
eventually. No, well, in my case, yeah, you got into podcasting before I did.
True.
But I
Yes.
was inspired by you because you were
Ooh.
so good at it.
This is very nice.
Yes. And then I
This
got
is-
into podcasting as a way to mask my trauma, which is what I do on a daily basis.
Great. Exactly. That's it.
I'm
We all
still
got to
doing it.
cope. Exactly. Well, and I think a healthy vehicle to do such a thing. So that's how we stayed friends the whole time. I like the simple. I like that I can understand. So my podcast was about dogs. Great. Easy peasy. We understand it. We love it.
Very relatable for
Thank
most
you.
involved.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
So in life, in the world right now, I am a podcast creator, not for myself, but for other people. I make shows for companies. And then for Julie, I will be representing.
Renee's job is to ask the questions that the listeners are probably thinking.
Sure. If your listener had never, I mean, yes,
Had
let's
never
go with that.
listened before.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so the podcast, since we started in 2018,
Crazy.
has gone through a lot of changes, and I talk less about genetic genealogy, though it's always in there, and
Yes.
I still tell from the trenches stories and
Great.
what have you as much as I
Love
can.
it.
But through this process, I've become way more aware of the importance of elevating the voices of those of us that are silenced by the
Yes.
multi-billion-dollar infant adoption industry. Because every time we say something, and it's super triggering for somebody as much of a delicate flower as I am, it's super triggering because people are
Yeah.
constantly telling me to be grateful and
Mm.
that they know adoptees that are fine. And it's super complicated. And, most adoptees that are like, I'm fine, are people who either haven't yet come out of the fog
Yep. Fair. Yep.
or will never manifest. A good example I like to give is Kristen Chenoweth, who lives a charmed life.
Sure.
And
things worked out okay for her.
yes. And she, which for good reason, she's incredibly talented and a lovely person. However, I take issue with her comparing her adoption to pet adoption and telling people that she was rescued and, using all that toxic positivity that is not helpful to those of us who are trying to elevate facts about adoption trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
So-
I'm here for it.
So I will tell you, since the last podcast, which is you'll notice has been quite a few weeks, probably 6 weeks, something like that.
Great. Yeah, everybody needs a spring break.
I'll be honest, as I always am. I've been waffling back and forth about whether or not to continue the podcast.
Okay.
Because, like I said, the reason I started the podcast in the first place was to change the focus of my brain to something that I felt like it was doing a public service to get out of my own head about my own trauma. And I've gone back and forth about it over the years. And there are times when I've been like, I don't know, do I need to do this anymore? And then I see how adoptees are treated. And I'm like, no, I have to keep doing this.
Sure.
Selfishly, this is really the only performing I ever get to do anymore.
There you go. That's reason alone. That's a reason enough. Absolutely.
Even though I'm just myself, there's
yes.
no acting here. As a performer, it's a form of expression and it's therapeutic. And I can't afford therapy right now. So,
Yes. Also same.
Yeah. So let's go to a little story time. During the break, my family and I went on a cruise. We went on the Joko cruise, which is the nerd cruise that my husband goes on every year. And I've been on a few. And this year we took the entire family.
Whole family.
Yeah, was really looking forward to it and have been on kind of an upswing mood wise lately.
Yeah.
Kind of a good place. I have a job that I'm really enjoying and which is not genetic genealogy. I regularly post memes, adoptee focused memes. On Facebook. I started out, I just did it on the podcast group. And lately I've gotten a little braver about it. And I kind of post them to my public page with little to no recourse. Or if somebody pushes back, it gives me an opportunity to explain why I said that. And
start a conversation. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I'm fine with a little bit of pushback if somebody is willing to listen.
Sure.
What I'm referring to. So this particular meme said something like, adoption does not guarantee a forever family. It's a simple factoid.
Great.
And I did make a little addendum to it saying, so true, and mention something about my extended adoptive family I'm basically a stranger to them at this point.
Right.
Now that my parents are deceased, there's really no contact
connection
or anything because they were never really my family
and
they knew it. And once that there was no connection with my parents, I wasn't one of them.
Yeah.
So this was so weird because my aunt, my dad's sister, younger sister, who I have not seen since I was 15 years old, by the way.
Okay.
And the last time we spoke was very briefly right after my dad died. And she it was actually a very nice conversation in that she was like, agreeing with me that my brother is from hell and the things that he has done within the family. I don't even remember what she said, but I deleted it immediately and then messaged her privately and said, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, she started out by alluding to me doing what my brother had accused me of doing before.
Oof.
Regarding my dad, and then saying something about me denigrating the memory of my parents who are no longer here to speak for themselves.
Oh boy.
And then I said to her, what are you talking about? Where did that information come from? And she couldn't give me a straight answer. Keep in mind, I was slowly realizing, well, this woman isn't the 40-year-old that I left at the Melbourne airport in 1980.
Sure.
She's about 80. So
Yeah,
you
she's
know,
your dad's sister.
she's
Yeah,
my dad's sister. And the Dixon family are a stoic family that ignores the elephant in the room.
of course.
And
Yeah,
we're never very close. We're never close with us. As far as I could tell, my father was never close with her. And here's the kicker of the whole thing.
yeah. Okay.
I've told this story before,
Right.
but when I was in Australia visiting my biological mother for the first time,
Hmm.
I was with my grandmother, my dad's mother,
Right.
and she knew why I was there, but I was visiting with her, and she got kind of quiet, and then she said, "Julie, now that you found your biological mother, you won't tell Diane that she's adopted, will you?"
Oh,
And
oh, oh,
uh-huh. And
oh.
at that
Uh-huh.
point, I had forgotten that
Aha.
Diane was
Was
adopted,
adopted. Okay.
and everybody in the family knew but her.
Oh,
And I am known as an oversharer, so I'm sure they tried to keep it from me, but I found out somehow. So I
right.
said, "Oh, no, of course not. That's not my business."
Yeah.
So not 2 weeks later, did we hear, or did my dad hear from the family that Diane had been contacted by her biological family, and it
Oh,
all had
whoa.
come out.
Oh, whoa.
And of
Okay.
course, as nobody speaks about anything, I have no idea what the ramifications or the repercussions were
Of course.
about
Yeah.
that.
Okay. All right.
So you would think that I'm sure it wasn't a happy time for her.
Yeah. No, no, I bet it wasn't just like, nah, I have no feelings around this. I bet, yeah,
Exactly.
not emotional. Yes.
Exactly. And in fact, I have been toying with the idea of reaching out to her and seeing
Yeah.
if she wanted to have a conversation about it, because I would
Yes.
love to know how far she's come with this, what it was like for her, because that would be, that I think that's really good data to have.
100%. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and I mentioned that. I said, "Look, I don't know what this money thing is that you're talking about and where you got that crazy information, but it sounds to me like you are concerned about my activism.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing with that is trying to elevate the voices of people who were lied to, such as yourself.
There we are. Hmm.
And
Yes.
and frankly, I don't really care if that's what's
Yeah.
really bothering you. But what really bothered me was the implication that I had done something to my dad.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That was
Yeah.
what really
Yeah. No,
bothered
that
me
would
about the
bug
whole
me
thing.
too. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, ended up, and she never gave. She said my situation was completely different. That I'm not like that, and told
Okay.
me to go away. And I'm like, dude,
You started this,
unfriend
my
me.
sweet baby. Yeah.
Why? You're
Yeah.
the one. You've never commented on anything I've ever said before,
Yeah.
and this is not the first time I've talked about this. So,
Right.
but it was very upsetting. And
Of
this was
course.
2
Yeah.
days before I went
Of
on
course it happened
vacation.
then.
And
Oh,
so
Julie.
my vacation was kind of wrought
Yeah.
with my mind going 100 miles a minute,
Churning.
and this
Yeah.
dysregulation that I have constantly.
Yep.
It comes in waves, but I'd been in a really good place up until
Yeah.
then. And
Um,
so the cruise was not as relaxing as I had hoped.
so sorry.
Yeah. But at the same time, it reminded me that, you know what, I don't think I'm done with the podcast. I think I need to keep pushing through, as painful as it is to hear things like this. Those of us who can need to speak out.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts around this. I think
Please
first,
say all
let's
of them.
focus on you, and that if you enjoy podcasting, you should podcast. If you don't enjoy podcasting, you have no obligation to.
I enjoy podcasting, and we will see with the self, because now I'm going to have to do all the editing, which I enjoy. But
I love. Okay.
yes, let's
We'll
see.
see.
Let's see
We'll
how
see
that works
how
out.
it goes.
Yes.
And yeah, something I don't know if this is helpful or not. What I would give to your aunt is like, you're not listening. You're not, we can disagree, but you're not listening. And I'm curious if maybe there was something going on there, that there was a lot of projecting, like something's
Oh,
churning in
absolutely.
for her.
No, absolutely.
And
And in
it
fact,
accidentally
at
got
one point
splashed
I
onto
asked
you.
her if she was drunk, because the first thing that she said, was so out of left field.
Yeah.
Like that was what she led with,
Yeah.
whereas it would have made more sense if she said I was denigrating the memory of my parents.
Right.
Who, and by the way, if you look at the meme, I actually was talking about her, not my parents.
Sure.
I was talking about extended family.
I wonder if this could be helpful to you to like sort of think about, this might be about her guilt that she didn't take care of you as an extended family
I
member?
don't know. I mean, that is across the board happened with on both
Yeah.
sides of my adoptive parents' families. I have
Okay.
been left out in the cold, even though they know the truth or they know, what my brother is capable of.
Yeah.
They're the type of people that don't want to get involved.
Well, and I think not to like lump all boomers into one category, but I think they're all emotionally immature. Like they just don't know how to
Absolutely.
handle any feeling that isn't, I'm right. So
Yes.
anything other than that just turns into blame because
Mhm.
they don't know how to handle guilt, sadness, regret.
Sure.
So doesn't excuse it. None of that excuses it. But
Yeah.
I do think that wasn't about you at all. I think that was about her own whatever
Probably.
she's
And like I said, she may have been altered at that time. She may
Sure.
have Alzheimer's, or I have not
Could be
seen
that
her
too.
since I was 15. Well, I mean, my uncle is still living. He doesn't talk to me.
Right.
And I know for a fact that he has been harmed by my brother,
Yeah.
but he still washed his hands of the whole thing and
Sure.
didn't want to be
It's
involved. So
It's just so interesting for you to say because the meme itself was adoption doesn't equal forever family.
Mhm.
And then your response to her is like, I haven't seen you since I was 15.
yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that the case closed?
But
That's
her,
it.
but it was also, she took that meme as something that was the having to do with my parents.
Oh.
And it didn't. It was about
Okay.
adoption. It was a
Yeah.
simple factoid about adoption.
Yeah. I think this is probably what adoptees have to deal with all the time is like, not only do I have to like sort of sit with what
Well,
I'm going
yes.
through, but I also got to carry
We're
the
just
emotional baggage of everybody
I
else.
will say, because I think about this all the time, there are two separate issues here.
Yeah.
All adoptees suffer trauma by being relinquished.
Right.
So all newborns that are taken from their mother and do not get that immediate connection, physical connection with their biological mother when they are born, that right there is the primal wound. Their oxytocin is delayed and you go into fight or flight because that is the only thing you know. So your brain is altered permanently
Out of the gate.
at
the
that
jump.
moment.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So
Okay.
there's that. And it can manifest in different ways or not manifest.
Sure.
Then there are the people who went through that, plus had horrible adoptive families.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I did not have a horrible adoptive family, but I didn't have a great adoptive family.
Sure.
I loved, and it goes without saying that I loved my parents. I love the memory of my parents.
Right.
But I did not have an idyllic childhood.
Yeah. Yeah. You
There
just
were
weren't
things
nurtured.
that
Yeah.
were not done, that could have been done and should have been done.
Yes.
And I essentially raised myself. That is not to say I did not love my parents. I loved my parents.
Of course.
So
They did the best
for
job they
me,
could. Yeah.
and I said this before, is I started to come out of the fog when I had Lily
Yeah.
because it was profound. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't get any of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that really kind of shot me out of the cannon. Like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe this is
okay.
why I'm kind of crazy all the time.
This
Not
right. Crazy. You're not crazy, but yeah.
I'm a little. And then of course it was completed
Right.
with what happened with my dad and my brother. And that exacerbated the CPTSD and gave me full on PTSD. So my brain's messed up and I am regularly dysregulated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can give you a number of symptoms of that everybody, has heard me talk about.
So proud of you. Like, because again, we haven't talked about this in a long time. I have to say, you have come so far in just like knowing exactly what's going on. Like your awareness around what's going on with you has come so far. I'm very impressed.
I'm painfully aware of what's going on, which it is great in one way, but in another way, I am my hypervigilance is at an all-time high. But I'm seeing two very dear old friends this afternoon who I love and I'm looking forward to seeing.
Right.
But my hypervigilance is even kicking in with that because what happens is when you have big plans coming up, your brain starts going, what if this happens? What if this is la 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 la? And you start to project a situation that may happen and how you're going to handle it or how you're going to talk about this or should you talk about it. It's constant. And
Fascinating.
I
Yeah.
and once I came to that realization, was when I used to drive out to my dad's to see him. There was one time we were going out and the whole family was in the car and I was driving. And my husband and I got into a little bit of a disagreement about which route to take. And I started to cry and could
Mm.
not stop crying for the whole rest of the drive there.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
hindsight, that's because of my hypervigilance, because I was
Yep.
already in a place like, okay, I'm going to see my dad. What's he going to
Yep.
say? How's he
Yep.
going to trigger me? Because that
Yep.
that has been my life.
Yeah.
And this is why a lot of adoptees go no contact with their adoptive
Right.
parents
It's
later
just
in
too
life.
much.
And it had crossed my mind a
Mm.
few times.
Mhm.
It was easier when I lived on the other side of the country. I always kept in touch with them,
Sure.
but I was never able to commit to doing that. Because I because I really loved them and I
Yeah.
just wanted them to understand me and be proud of me
Of
and
course.
give me some kind of sign that I'd done something right in life.
Yeah.
And also, I wanted them to know their grandchildren.
Sure.
Lily was named after my mother. You know, my dad walked me down the aisle. These are all things that if you hate your parents, you don't do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yes. And it's
Right.
just so bizarre how it's so black and white, or that it wants it to be so black and white. That's not how life works. That's not how any of that
Absolutely not.
works
No,
at all.
no.
You can have all this love and kindness and good in them, but also let's acknowledge the other side of all this happened.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be able to hold both.
It's hard.
I'm sorry
It's
that
hard.
I think it's about. I genuinely think it's about her guilt.
Oh no, I don't know what it's about. And I frankly don't care what it's about
Fair.
because
Yeah.
but it triggered me. It just put me
Yeah.
into that place where, that's why I'm trying to right the wrongs that were done. Because
Yes.
is that a story that has been out there? Like, does she really think that I did those things to my dad? I mean, that is the most disturbing of
Of
all.
course. Yeah.
You know what? I feel better having said that now. I needed
Okay.
to. I've
Okay.
been my
Yeah.
hypervigilance has been strong today.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
I felt like I needed to start with that whole thing
Yeah.
and why I had considered stopping the podcast and why I ultimately decided to continue with it. And if the listeners have any suggestions of how they would like for me to proceed,
I like that.
I would love some feedback.
I mean, I'm sure your listeners who just listened to the story are just like, same, me too, me too, me too. So I don't know that you're going to get the feedback of, yeah, why don't you go ahead and quit? I don't think that's what's coming
Probably
your
not.
way.
I don't know. Or maybe, I mean, there may be people that if they think I'm going to talk more about adoption trauma than about genetic genealogy, may lose interest because they may have started listening because of the genetic genealogy component of it.
Sure.
And also the classic TV component of it and the musicals component of it, which we can still do.
Yes.
We can still do.
We can still get that in there. Absolutely.
Okay.
All
right. Let's
I
take
like
a
that.
break. If you're enjoying Cutoff Genes, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We are back, and more than one person has requested that I weigh in on the Alabama Supreme Court ruling that frozen embryos can now be considered children under state law.
Oh, I do know this. Okay.
Yeah. A decision critics said could have sweeping implications for fertility treatment in the state. So the decision was issued in a pair of wrongful death cases brought by couples who had frozen embryos destroyed in an accident at a fertility clinic. Justices, citing anti-abortion language in the Alabama Constitution, ruled that in 1872 state law allowing parents to sue over the death of a minor child applies all unborn children regardless of their location. Yeah, it says unborn children are children without exception based on developmental stage, physical location, or any other ancillary characteristics, Justice J. Mitchell wrote in Friday's majority ruling for the all-Republican court. Mitchell said the court had previously ruled that fetuses killed while a woman is pregnant are covered under Alabama's wrongful death of a minor act, and nothing excludes extrauterine children from the act's coverage. Here's my thinking on it.
Yeah.
Number one, if it is true that fertilized eggs,
Yeah. Yeah.
just fertilized eggs,
That's it. We just have
are
a bunch of cells happening
children.
right now.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then let it be said that all pregnant women
Yeah.
can drive in the carpool lane.
Ooh. Love
Mhm.
this. Love
Yeah.
this. Yep.
I'm being
Consistency there.
silly, but my biggest concern about this is that this is going to be a problem, because when people harvest eggs and then
Yeah.
fertilize them and keep them frozen until they get a baby,
Mm-hmm.
there are usually a bunch left in there.
Yeah.
And this implies that people will be forced to use those,
Yeah.
and have more children than they wanted.
Oh boy. Swinging it back to myself, as you know, I am a
Yes.
rampant egg donor. Too many, some might say. What does that do there? Do I have?
What do you mean too many? You did it once, right? Once or
No,
twice?
no, so many times, Julie.
You
So
did?
many. So many. Yeah.
But you
23
only
me is going to be 23 of me at some point.
I thought it was only like 2. Weren't you told that there were 2 outcomes?
Well, 2 that I know of. Yes, but as far as like the
Oh, I
eggs
see.
that have what you're saying, the like going back to the egg thing, I don't know, I think like 100 eggs are out there and
Oh
frozen.
my gosh. Do you think
I
they're still
know.
frozen? Well, that wouldn't happen in California anyway.
Okay, thank God.
So,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
So that was where
But
you
it's just
did that, right?
it's so ludicrous. Sorry, but I don't know, because we're in crazy town now. So
Yeah.
how are you going to be
Well,
consistent with this?
they're not. There's
Alabama.
consistency is not important. My concern is that this will stop people who are having fertility issues,
Yeah.
that want children of their own, to not take that route and will immediately jump to adoption.
Oh.
Because this
Yeah.
is and the Supreme Court justices who voted against Roe versus Wade are, what's her name? The one that has all the adopted kids that Trump put in.
Sure.
In her opinion about it,
Mhm.
she wrote that it's important to outlaw abortion because our domestic infant supply is low.
Oh, Lord in heaven.
So thus saying
Supply?
that adoption is wonderful and easy for everybody, and so let's make more babies to
Yeah.
traumatize. Right.
Yeah.
So that is my
Ay,
biggest
ay, ay.
concern with that. I mean, I have many concerns
Sure.
about that law, but
Uh-huh.
it's not helping the cause in any way,
Right.
shape, or form. So
No,
that's my
certainly not.
opinion, guys. I'm sure it does not surprise any of you.
No, they're all blown
right.
away. No
Okay.
kidding. Wow. Julie took a hard left on that one.
Let
Yeah.
me see what else. Ooh, what about this one? Do you know who Dominique Moceanu is?
The gymnast?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me more. Listen, she's a little spitfire. I loved her so much. She's so good.
Yes. And I remember this story from years ago.
Okay.
But now there's a documentary about it
Oh,
that
okay.
called She Looks Like Me. And so I'm just going to read from the article. And it
Please.
might start coming to you. Olympic gymnast Dominique Moceanu says the aftermath of finding her long-lost sister, Jen Bricker, makes for a heartbreaking family dynamic. Still, Moceanu, 42, and Bricker, 36, found the strength to open up about their journey in their new documentary, She Looks Like Me. I became extremely vulnerable in this filming process, and I couldn't hide it, Moceanu tells People. I guess this is from People magazine. Anyway,
Okay,
their
gotcha.
painful past dates back to Chicago, Illinois in 1987, before Dominique was born, I think. Oh, no, it's after she was born. So she was alive. I wonder if she remembers that.
Yeah.
Okay, their painful past dates back to Chicago, Illinois in 1987, when Moceanu's parents left Bricker, who was born without legs, due to an uterine band cutting off the blood supply to her lower limbs in utero, as a newborn at the hospital. Bricker was then adopted by an Illinois family and grew up watching Moceanu's incredible rise as an Olympic gymnast, unaware that Moceanu, her idol, was her sister. Full sister, by the way. Bricker pursued her own accomplishments as an acrobat and aerialist, including touring as a featured act on Britney Spears' World Tour and a selection into the Gallery of Legends Hall of Fame by the World Acrobatic Society.
I saw her in Britney's tour.
There you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
Okay.
There were times when I was reliving these scenes that were so hard for me, Mosiano says, of the film, which they say 12 years after they initially shared their discovery with the world. For Bricker, hearing my mom talk about my biological mom and then the adoption scene or the scene when I was born and they left me at the hospital, it hit me in a way I was just not expecting.
Yeah.
Although Mosiano cherishes her evolving relationship with her sister, talking about her mother, Camellia, 62, for the film was especially difficult, obviously, because Camellia still holds guilt around placing
course she
Bricker for adoption.
does.
Of course she does.
Of
I
course
mean,
she does.
that's
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Know. When it came to the pain my mother has gone through, and she still goes through because she still has shame, fear, and guilt because of being judged, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
You know about being judged. I mean,
sure. But again, it's
she has
that
a reason to feel
generation.
guilt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's difficult to be the person all the time that has to filter these conversations or calls, or trying to make someone not feel ashamed or keep someone from being upset with me for unveiling things like that. So I'm sure the parents are not happy that they made this documentary. They're speaking publicly about it.
Yep.
But them's is the breaks, people. These are things that need to be talked about. Maybe they gave her up because they did not have the financial means to give her the care that she needed. Which, and so Dominique was already born. So maybe Dominique was already a promising prodigy, gymnastics prodigy, and they wanted to focus on her and thought that might take it. This is complete projection.
Of course.
By the way.
Of course. Well, we should watch the documentary and see what's what.
Yeah, and you know what? I looked where I could watch it. It's not publicly available yet, but I will look for it. I think that they're doing film
movie
festivals.
nights.
And so,
I'll bring the popcorn.
Absolutely. Yeah. I thought that was fascinating. And it also reminds me of a case that I've talked about before that happened when I was working for the PI. And you probably haven't heard this, but
I don't think so.
So one of the reasons I don't work for him anymore is because he made choices that were ethically questionable.
Okay.
For his company, he liked to sensationalize people's stories to get more views for his company to make more money, which, that's how businesses work. I understand. It was very uncomfortable for him to be doing this off of the backs of adoptees and exploiting these people's stories before they are ready to be public about it.
Sure.
And the one case that really sent me over the edge was he was hired by a young girl who was an adoptee, and come to find out that she was an identical twin. Her parents had kept her twin but given her up.
Woo!
And they said that it was because they couldn't afford 2 babies. So whichever was born second, they decided they were going to give away.
Tough. I mean, the plot from the musical Blood Brothers. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, that's right.
I know.
Why have we never talked about Blood Brothers before?
We should. Could we do a full episode dedicated to Blood Brothers, please?
Oh, Blood Brothers is so good. Oh my gosh.
So good.
Chills. I got chills when I saw it twice on Broadway. Anyway. And at one point so he reunited them,
right,
and really wanted to get it out there, get the story out there and put cameras in people's faces. And the mother was freaked out because she knew what she had done. And so he went there and talked her into accepting this daughter back into her life and all this stuff. Then the adoptee suddenly, it was just too much for her.
Yeah.
And she took a step back because she needed to process.
Of course.
And instead of him giving her and her family, giving her that space to do that,
right,
he decided to side with the biological family and went out to their ranch. By the way, you remember how they were too poor? They are horse people. They own horses. Show horses. So he went out there and started making a documentary about that, dissing the adoptee who had stepped back like she had abandoned them.
Oh, buddy.
And putting cameras in the parents' faces. And the worst part was he finally was able to sell the story to a British tabloid and told the story from the mother's point of view so that she didn't look so monstrous. Sure. And showed a picture of the 3 of them together blurring out the adoptee's face, but knowing that the adoptee is identical to the non-adoptee. So her face was there anyway.
Yeah, pretty much
Yes.
there. Yeah.
It was
Wow.
it was too much. Yes. So that was what this reminded me of. I also want to talk about American Idol. Do you watch American Idol still? I don't.
No, need to, should.
Yeah.
But tell me more.
But of
What's the
course,
story?
there was this thing going around. There was a clip going around of this girl who was auditioning for American Idol. And one of the reasons I don't watch American Idol is that they make it more about these sob stories that people have
Yeah.
to
It's pretty
keep it interesting for
emotionally
people to
manipulative.
watch.
Mhm.
Yes, as opposed to their actual talent.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch it because I'd heard about it, and it sounded incredibly triggering for me. But so
Right.
she goes in and she sings one of her mother's songs and tells the story. And then they invite her parents in, but also her biological family comes in. I did think that it was they were bringing her mother in for her to meet for the first time, which
Good
would have been
Lord.
way worse.
Yeah.
But they
so
didn't.
much worse. Yeah.
Yes. So when I finally did watch it, because people are like, "Oh, I got chills. I was crying. It was so wonderful." All of that stuff that gives me the creeps. The biological mother is deceased, unfortunately.
Okay.
And so she never got to meet her, but this was extended family. This was her aunts, I think, and maybe grandparents or something,
Right.
who she was meeting for the first time.
Yeah.
That was a little easier for me to take because she had already spoken to them in private. So
Gotcha.
she had already been in touch with them, but had not met them personally before.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that was a little easier for me to accept.
Okay. Still exploitive as hell, but yes.
Incredibly exploitive. And
Yeah.
but what would have sent me over the edge is if they had a camera on their faces and brought her mother in there for the first
Yeah.
time. And because
Yeah.
that makes me nauseated thinking of them doing doing that to just again on the backs of adoptees, telling these
Ugh.
stories as if everything is wonderful and uncomplicated.
Yes.
Anyway, so yes, I had commented about it on a few posts and said this is gross.
Good.
But watching it, I was a little less disturbing because of the fact that it was not her mother and that she was already in touch with these people and
Good.
they had just brought these people in. But anyway,
Okay.
please don't do that. Please
Yeah.
don't
Yeah,
give
yeah,
people
yeah.
surprises with a camera in their face for views. That's gross.
And the kiddo herself, like the contestant herself, the one with talent, is young, right?
Yeah, she's like 21, I think.
I'm sure they're going to defend it with like consent, but we had consent. We had consent. I know, but they're babies and they want to be able to sing.
Well, and
you're
also
making the condition for that this.
Well, and okay, let me be really clear about this.
Yeah.
If that opportunity had been given to me, I would have jumped at it.
Of course you would have. Of course
I would have jumped at it, not knowing how exploitative it was.
Yes.
But
I would have too.
So much I understand now.
Yeah.
That I did not understand then. And for me, it would have been a double whammy. I get to meet my biological family and I get to sing on TV.
So I'm sure, I would imagine at this juncture, she's like, it was great. I got everything I wanted.
Of course. But it'd be
glad
interesting to see 20 years down the line how it manifests in her. Because that's what happens.
Precisely. Yeah. I was just thinking I would do the same thing. I was like, God, what would I be like? Guys, no, please don't. At the opportunity to be famous.
Yeah.
Sell my soul. Yeah.
But I understand it. Final story of the day. And, everything is kind of heavy today. And I thought I might lighten up with the last story, but there's nothing light about this story.
Okay.
So
okay.
Sorry, gang. Sorry, everybody. Okay. You ready?
Ready. I mean, maybe. Let's see.
Here's something that I have talked about, a fear that all adoptees have that nobody in all the years adoption has been a thing has verbalized.
Tell me.
Woman took a DNA test and discovered she dated her half-brother in high school.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a piece of information she would probably rather not know. Ignorance is bliss and all that. However, one woman didn't realize a DNA test to find out more about her health and parents would lead to another shocking discovery, or around 20 plus to be exact. Completely different in character, but also looks to her dad and worried about a health issue, which neither of her parents had shown any signs of. Victoria Hill decided to get a DNA test. The 39-year-old licensed clinical social worker, oh, that's helpful, from Connecticut, sent her DNA off via 23andMe Genomics Company. Nothing could have prepared her for the results of the test. The test revealed the man Hill grew up with and knowing as her dad wasn't actually her biological father. Not only that, her biological father, a sperm donor, had lent his services to multiple other women too. And so Hill had multiple half siblings she previously had no knowledge of.
Mhm.
Later
Mhm,
discovering
mhm.
she had over 20. One of those 20 plus siblings turned out to be someone who Hill already knew very well. One of her newfound siblings claimed the sperm donor wasn't a donor at all, but the doctor who'd been helping Hill's mom get pregnant used his own sperm. Happens all the time, is not
Yeah.
illegal, everybody. This is why we are trying to get reform in the
Insane.
donor community.
Yeah.
Please. Hill tells CNN she was traumatized by the news, adding, now I'm looking at pictures of people thinking, well, if he could be my sibling, anyone can be my sibling. And knowing he'd also been conceived via a donor as well as his parents having used the same doctor to Hill, Hill's high school boyfriend decided to take a test too. Yeah. And they are half siblings. I won't, that's all I really need to tell you about this.
Yeah.
But they were indeed intimate when they dated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool, huh?
Yeah.
It's creepy.
So tough.
So Hill's story is considered an extreme example of fertility fraud. How, I mean, it's an example. It is not the first time and probably won't be the last. And it said, and the first time there's been a confirmed case of somebody actually dating and being intimate with a half sibling. That's not true. They're all over. There was one in England where a couple was married and had children, and when they found out.
Oh boy.
Fertility fraud is illegal in 12 states, only 12 states in the US. That is the same amount of states that adoptees have a right to their original birth certificates, by the way, out of 50 states. Two other women in the state named Eve and Laura discovered they were victims of fertility fraud too. So they are using these cases as a way to regulate the fertility industry. And I don't know why it would be so difficult.
I don't either. That's
I-
so bizarre. It seems so. This one seems easy. But as you were describing all of that, I was thinking of like, well, God, how do you prevent that? And then it started to get sci-fi on me. Like, do we just scan every person we come into contact with to be? But then I think then you get yourself into like, weird
Well, I mean,
hierarchy of
it's not
needs.
uncommon for adoptees to ask people that they are potentially dating if they
Yeah.
were adopted, or
Oh.
or where they're from, or if they know of any adoptions in their family. And
Yeah.
and this is before DNA testing.
Sure.
And I will say I have
Oh,
I have
wow.
5 brothers, all who are within dating range for somebody my age.
Huh.
And
Interesting.
we didn't grow up that, like, we grew up probably maybe 100 miles apart. But
So scary.
okay, so when I don't know if you know this, I met my biological half brother Rob.
No. I followed along on
so
TikTok, but I haven't
in
talked to you.
August, I took a trip to the UK. So did my brother Rob, and we walked in the footsteps of our ancestors together.
Dude, the
It
best.
was the best. It was the
While I'm
best
making
time.
requests for documentaries, could we also please make that a documentary, please?
Yes, please.
I'd love to see it.
That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
But more than once, people referred to us as a couple.
Of course they did. Yeah.
Because we're people of a certain age traveling together. Why wouldn't we be a couple?
Sure.
And there were like things like we go to a restaurant, be like, here's a nice romantic corner for you. And we're both like, siblings, we're siblings.
No. Yeah. Terrifying. I mean, I think that can happen to all. Like that happens to me and my brother. And the way that we're just like, absolutely not. But I think, what's so tricky about that is,
isn't that weird though, that we would like,
weird.
I never thought about people thinking that of people who actually grew up together as siblings.
Isn't that wild?
Interesting how I had such a weird reaction to it, but it actually probably happens to everybody.
I think all siblings do. Yeah, but I think the power in that is knowing that, oh no, this is my sibling. That's a lot trickier when you don't know. And it gets even more tricky. And then, I don't know, Julie, you let me know. Successful relationships, from what I understand, they are based in like a common, like we like the same things. We agree on the same, like there's a commonality there.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you know, siblings usually have that. That's tough, man. That's tough.
Yeah. Well, there is a thing called genetic attraction. Were you
I'm
doing
scared.
the podcast?
I'm scared. Tell me, what's genetic attraction?
It's genetic sexual attraction. It's kind of a side thing that I touched on very briefly years ago. And
Okay.
it's creepier than hell. And I guess I'm maybe going to have to look it up and talk about it
I mean,
on
yeah,
the
sounds
next
like, okay,
podcast.
we got to do a whole
But
podcast dedicated
yes.
to blood brothers and one dedicated to being attracted to your siblings.
Hey, I think this was a fun episode.
Good note to end on. Yeah.
And
I don't want to marry my brother. Great. Okay, good. I'm glad we got to the bottom of it. Fantastic.
all right. So Renee, welcome back. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this for me and with me.
Delight. I told you, I'll tell our listeners too, like, and I'm sure your listeners have this too, like just since the pandemic, it is so hard to consistently see your friends. So if a podcast is the reason to do it, then yeah, I'm in.
Yay.
Let's do it.
Before we leave, Renee, tell the people what you would like to tell them about yourself as a sign off.
Oh,
No
sure.
pressure.
I don't know how anything. I mean, listen, only time will tell. I've quit TikTok in a fit of insecure rage twice.
Again? Oh, no, but you're doing really well on TikTok.
Oh, yeah, I love you so much. It's not going great. But yes, I'm on TikTok.
You've gotten way more followers in a short amount of time than I did initially.
Oh, that's very nice of you. Do you know what happened? You want to hear my gimmick of what I did? I bought wedding invitations to someone who's not getting married to send to companies to try to get free stuff.
I watched
TikTok
it. I watch your TikToks, Renee.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's why. But that's why. Like, if they're like, oh, a scam, I'm into that. But just.
So, what's your TikTok handle so people can?
Wait, I think let's
you
start with my
it,
name.
Didn't you?
Renee Culver. I need to change it back. I think right now it's still Agreeable Renegade.
Yes,
because I wanted to tell people that I'm nice, but I don't follow the rules. Let's workshop that later.
I think that's brilliant.
Agreeable Renegade. Okay, yes. So follow me at Agreeable Renegade on TikTok.
Okay,
great.
Yes. And any other socials you'd like to draw people's attention to?
Again, I quit in a fit of insecure rage.
Good for you. Good for you. Hey, I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. Find all things Julie Dixon Jackson at cutoffjeans.com. If you would like to share your story, if you have suggestions, if you would like to tell me how awful I am, just reach out to me there or in the Facebook group. By the way, if you're a listener and have been trying to get into the private Facebook group but have not been allowed in, that's because you didn't answer the questions yet. And I'm not letting anybody in that doesn't answer the questions.
Good.
Because that's where all the hot tea happens, if you will. Okay. Yes. And on that note, welcome back, Renee.
Thank you. Thrilled.
And the truth is in your jeans.